Let's talk about cosine law. In the last video we talked about sine law, so of course there is a cosine law. Some people call this cos law because we talk about sine and cos, but really we should be referring to them as sine and cosine. But we call it cos a lot of the time, so people will call this cos law. Sounds a lot like coleslaw, the food, but no, it is called cosine law. So that's how we refer to it. What does this mean? What is this referring to? Well, it's referring to a formula that looks something like this. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Now you say, wait, this is Pythagorean theorem. Well, hang on, there's more. Minus 2AB cos C. There's your formula. Now what does this allow you to do? It allows you to find the length of a side when you have the other two side lengths as well as the opposite angle. People will commonly refer to this as side, angle, side. Because if you have a side and then an angle and then the next side, you can use cosine law. An example of this would be if you have something like this, where this is, say, 50 degrees, this is 20 meters, and this is 30 meters, and you're asked to find C, right? This is your length C. What you would say is that C, now you could say C squared equals all this, or you could just say C equals square root of all this, right? Square root both sides. And then you would have, okay, so what's A squared? Well, A is, we'll say 20, right? So 20 squared plus B we'll say is 30, so 30 squared, minus 2 times A times B times cos of C, which is 50 degrees. I want to drag this out a little bit more, just like that. And if you compute all this, it will give you the side length C. You get 23 meters. C is equal to 23 meters. That's the length of this side. Okay, let's do some more examples of this just to get some practice. Let's say you have a triangle, goes something like that. You have 50 feet, you have angle C, you have 30 feet, and you have 40 feet. The question is, what is angle C? Well, I told you before that you can use this to find a side, but yeah, you can also use it to find an angle when you have all the sides, right? Because from here, it's like, you can't use sine law to find an angle because you don't have any of the angles yet. But as it turns out, that's what cosine law is good for. So you write out your cosine law, right? You'll have C squared, which is the side length across from angle C, so 40 squared, is equal to A squared, so we'll make 50A, just because, plus B squared, so 30 squared, minus 2A, B, running out of room here, let me move this, there we go, times cos of C. Now C is your only variable, so you can go ahead and solve for that. You move everything to the other side, so you'd have 40 squared minus 50 squared minus 30 squared, right? Move those two terms to the left. And then equals all this. Well, you can divide both sides by negative 2, 50, 30. Negative 2, 50, 30. And that would equal cos of C. Except you could just cos inverse both sides, so you can get C by itself. So cos inverse all of this, and that would equal C. So you do your work to isolate C, this is what you get. And if you compute all of this on your calculator, which you should get some practice doing to make sure you're familiar with how your calculator works and processes these functions, you'll get C is equal to 53.13 degrees, again approximately, right? And then from there, if you want to find the other angles, you could use sine law to find the other two, or you could use cosine law, again, go through this process to find the other two angles, completely up to you. Let's do another one. Say you have a triangle like this. This is 25 degrees, this is 10, this is 20, and this is A. Alright, so we set up our equation. So 25 degrees is the angle, meaning that the side across from that, the 20, is your C. So we have 20 squared equals A squared plus B squared, which we'll say is 10, minus 2A times 10 times cos of 25 degrees. So now we have to solve for A. Now you might notice what's happening here. We have a little bit of a quadratic situation, right? If we move everything to the right, you get 0 equals A squared minus 2 times 10 is 20, so 20 cos 25 degrees times a. So I wrote that as a number times a. And then you have 10 squared minus 20 squared, if I move that to the side. And 10 squared is 100, minus 20 squared, which is 400, will be minus 300. So what you have here looks like a simple trinomial, right? It looks like a quadratic. And so to solve for a here, you can use the quadratic formula or completing the square, but I would recommend just plug this into the quadratic formula. And if you do that, you'll have a equals, again, it's negative b, so 20 cos 25 squared, because this is negative, so it becomes positive, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 20 cos 25 degrees squared. I'm just putting the positive because even if it's negative, when you square it, it becomes positive, so it doesn't matter. Minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a, which is just 1, so just 2 times 1. When you calculate this, what you get is approximately 18.13 plus or minus 39.1 over 2. And if you subtract these, if you go with the minus, what you get is a negative answer. And because a represents a physical length of a triangle side, you can't use the negative answer, so we're just going to take the positive answer. And if you use the positive answer, you're going to get 28.6. So that's your answer. The length of a is 28.6. Let's move on to another one. Let's say you're swimming in the ocean. Here's you with your water wings, just like that, right? You're in the ocean. And over here, you have your friend, and your friend is in one of those inflatable swans. He's also in the ocean, right? He's having fun, just like that. And let's say over here, you have a shark fin, right? And your friend up here notices the shark fin. And he says, oh, I think I know how far away that is. I think I estimate that to be about 30 feet. And then he looks over at you. And he says, oh, I think I can figure out how far away my friend is. I think my friend is about 20 feet away. So he's looking at the shark, he's looking at you, his friend, and he's trying to figure out, okay, how far away is that shark from you? Because the shark's heading towards you now, right? You don't see it, but the shark's heading towards you, and the friend's trying to figure out how far away it is. So we'll call that x, trying to figure out what that is. One other piece of information your friend has is when he looks at the shark and then turns his head to look at you, he says, oh, that's about a 75-degree angle, it looks like. Now, instead of calling for your attention, trying to get your attention that there's a shark coming, he's doing this mental math. Instead, he's trying to figure out how far the shark is from getting to you. So in his mind, he starts going through a cosine law. So we have x squared, that's the side we're looking for, and it's across from the angle we have, so that'll be our c value, right? What's typically our c value, equals a squared, so 20 squared, plus 30 squared, right? That's your b squared, doesn't matter which is which, minus 2ab cos of 75 degrees, just like that. And now we solve for x, right? You square root both sides. X is going to equal 20 squared is 400, 30 squared is 900. Together that makes 1300 minus 2 times 20 times 30 is 1200 cos 75. We're square rooting both sides. So therefore, x is going to equal 31.5 feet. Once you plug that into your calculator, you'll get this answer. So it looks like the shark is just about 31.5 feet away from getting to you. That's not too far at all, especially if it's a big shark. So I don't know if there's anything your friend could do about this now that he has this information, right? Can't use that to his advantage really in any way, but you do have your final answer.